Hey everybody. So today's video is going to be very short and it's just going to be pretty much about what to look for when you're buying a PC or a Mac. So we're going to cover a few different things: the processor, the RAM, the storage, and the difference between Mac versus PC. So right away, we're just going to look at Best Buy. You can get them from other places. If you do buy from other places, I always recommend buying new or out of box. I don't recommend buying refurbished, simply because I say the same thing. Refurbished is similar to buying a used car that's maybe more than 5 or 6 years old. You buy it, will it run? It'll probably run. Is there a chance it's a great vehicle? It could be a great vehicle, but there's always a chance that you don't know what the last person did to it, and it might not run forever. You might end up pouring more money into it than what it's worth. So that's why I always say either buy new or buy out of box, which is practically new. And you can buy out of box from Best Buy, and that's how you can save up to roughly 20-30% off. So let's dive right into it. When we look at laptops, there is a few different components that you're going to want to look at right away. So when you look at, let's just say, the first page here, all I did was type in laptops and clicked all laptops, and this showed up right here. We do have some different brands here: HP, Asus, Dell, Lenovo, right? And when you look at these, most people don't really understand, well, what's the difference between like an i3 and an i5, or what's the 256 gigabytes? What is this? What does all this mean, right? So I went ahead and made this little chart here, and this little chart is pretty easy to follow through, and let me kind of guide you through it. Now, when you buy a laptop, the first thing we want to look at is the processor. We want to say, okay, well, what are you using this laptop for, or this desktop, and how long are you going to keep it, and who else is going to be using it. So I put three different grades here, which is more of like a budget friendly, mid grade, and a high grade. So budget friendly is going to be for those kind of people that just want to look up email, maybe write a Word document, maybe watch a small video on YouTube, but it's not meant for high definition videos. It's not meant for video games, or it's not meant for multiple applications at the same time. Just one application at a time, using it for about 10 or 15 minutes, turning it off, and then that's about it. So that's what the budget kind of section is for. Mid grade is going to be more for people that want to run, let's say, 2 or 3 different applications at a time. Let's say Word and watch a video, or listening to a podcast while they're typing on Word or writing an email, right? 2 or 3 different applications at the same time. Once again, for gaming, you probably could play some lower end games, if, let's just say, you're sharing a laptop with somebody or a desktop, but you can't really play things that are really advanced. Or you can't use the mid-range kind of computers for, let's say, graphic designing that takes a lot of processing power, right? And that's going to be mid grade, and then high grade over here, which is going to be the best of the best that you can get. And that's going to be more for if you are playing video games, or you are running graphic design, or you're running several applications at the same time. Let's just say you're watching videos and you're downloading something, and you're also writing a Word document. So you could do all three of those things with something that's more high grade. Now what I did here is, if you notice, within each of these categories, I have also the CPUs, the RAM, and the storage down here in the bottom. Okay, so I kind of made it to the point where what you can essentially do is you can take a snapshot of this if you'd like to, and when you're looking for a computer, you can see what type of CPU they have, what type of RAM it has, and what type of storage it has. And then you can kind of see yourself, is this a mid-grade, a budget-friendly, or more is it a high-grade type of PC? Now, the one reason why I say buy new or open box is because at least you know you're getting the latest technology. If you buy refurbished or you buy a used one, there's a good chance you're buying something that's probably going to be an older generation. And if you buy something with, let's just say, a high grade that's an i7, or maybe like a mid grade that's like an i5, chances are you're going to buy something so older model, and the older models don't run as fast, even though it's still an i5, they might not run as fast, or they might not have the same technology. So it's a good idea to just buy new or buy out of box that's still within a year or two of the model that you're looking for, right? So let's go ahead and go over CPUs real quick. CPUs, when we look at this is basically the brains of the computer. It is the calculation portion. It does all of the calculations on the computer. So when you ask the computer to do something, this is what generates all that information and works out all the details for you. Budget friendly, if you see any of these types, there are some other ones also out there, but these are the most common ones. And if you see something like this here, there's also an Atom 2. I didn't add the Atom in there, but there's an Atom 2. That's more of a budget friendly one as well if you see Atom. But that means it's more, like I said, budget friendly. Nothing too crazy on it. Mid-grade i7 or i5s, anything that has to do with 5s or 8s and above, those are usually mid. And then if you're looking at the high end, it's i7s, i9, Ryzen 7 and 9, and these are going to be more for like gaming and more high calculations. Looking at the RAM wise, most of the time it's 8 gigabytes or more nowadays. If you see anything under 8 gigabytes, I would say at the bare minimum you need 8 gigabytes. Anything lower than that, with today's technology, it's going to be very, very slow. Keep in mind, with a budget friendly laptop or desktop, it will slow down. Even though it's brand new, you will notice a little bit of a slowdown because it's a budget friendly computer. Now, if you get a mid-grade or better, you're not going to notice a slowdown really unless you're doing high-end stuff. But if you're doing everyday stuff, then the mid-grade is kind of where you want to be. Budget is going to be exactly that. People that are on a budget that just need a computer to do some word processing or do some office work kind of stuff. So in the mid-grade, you're looking at anywhere from about roughly around 12 to 16 gigabytes. And then for the high grade, about 32 gigabytes or more. Your RAM is basically where the CPU does its work. And what I mean by that is, imagine if you're doing a calculation and you need a piece of paper to write everything down. Well, the amount of space you have is like the gigabytes. So if you have 8 gigs, figure a piece of paper, you have to write it and you have to erase some stuff before you can rewrite over it again, right? Well, 12 gigabytes, 16 gigabytes, you figure it's 2 pieces of paper. You have to write, you can write 2 pieces worth of calculations first before you have to go ahead and scratch those out and then rewrite them over again. And then 32, figure about 4 pieces of paper. And that's just an example, right? So the more gigabytes you have, it's like the more room that your CPU has to do those calculations and make sure that things run accordingly. Because the CPU essentially takes information out of the storage at some points and it will put it into the RAM and vice versa to make this work. So all 3 of these kind of work together hand in hand, but the CPU uses the RAM as the sheet of paper to do the calculations. And then lastly, we have some storage here. Storage, what we're doing here is I'm looking at the most common storage, which is going to be 256, 512, and then 1 terabyte, which is equivalent to about 1,000 gigabytes. So about double this storage here. And then it goes up to 2 terabytes, which is 2,000 gigabytes, 3 and 4 terabytes, which is 4,000 gigabytes, and et cetera, right? Now there are 2 different types of hard drives. The main one is for today is SSD, which is your solid state drive, and the older version is your HDD, which is just a standard hard drive. Now the standard hard drive, since it's an older generation, it has moving parts in it. It's very similar to how a record player goes around with a needle, and it goes up and down and it reads the information off of the record player. Well, your hard drive is very similar to how that works. If you were to take a hard drive apart, a traditional one, you would see a disk that spins around with a little needle that goes back and forth and reads the data. Now, with solid state hard drive, that's really similar to how a USB works or a flash drive. So the way it works is there is no moving parts. Everything is very similar to how RAM works. So solid state is really similar to RAM, and that way it's quicker and it moves faster, transferring data in and out because there's no moving parts. The benefit with solid state is it doesn't break down as fast because there's no moving parts. So keep that in mind too. So I do have one other thing I put here on the side. Mac users, you're going to notice this right away because this is what you're looking for, is Mac and Apple over here. Apple has done something unique where they've created their own proprietary CPUs, and they started doing that just a couple years ago. Before they used Intel. They had a big partnership with Intel, and a lot of the stuff they had was anything from i3 all the way up to like i7 and i9. But they kind of hit some heads, and Apple decided not to use Intel anymore and to make their own products. So if you see one of these where it says M1, M1 Pro, or M1 Max, this is going to be their own CPU, and it has their own dedicated RAM and its own dedicated graphic card inside of the M1, M1 Pro, or M1 Max. Now the benefit to this is that it is proprietary, so it's only through Apple, but the con is that it's proprietary and it's only through Apple, right? So it all depends on what you're looking for. If you're a fan person from Apple, then you're probably excited about this. If you like the idea of having Intel, then you might not be as exciting. So if you do see one of these types of processors in an Apple product, chances are it's the newer model. If you see an Intel in the Apple product, whether it's a desktop or a laptop, chances are it's an older model. So try to stick with the new ones as well. And if you look here, the M1 is the first one that was brought in, I believe 2020, 2021. And this is more for like our budget friendly type of computers. Our mid is the Pro, and then our high is the Max. And there were some benchmarks that were done on there, and it's very, very similar to how the i9 and the i5 are. The One Pro and the Max are pretty close, but the Max does have better graphics on them, whereas the M1 is like an i5 with just basic graphics, nothing too fancy, right? We're not going over graphic cards in this for a main reason that this is more for the everyday user. It's not for the gamer, and it's not for the PC person, right? This is for someone that doesn't know much. So now, since we kind of have a good idea of what the different processors are, RAM chips, storage, and what they do here, right? Oh, and just to kind of talk about storage, 256 gigabytes, that's going to be something for someone that's just storing files and small images. 512 is going to be for someone that's storing maybe some small videos and some images and some files. And then 1 terabyte and larger is for the person that likes to play video games, or that has HD, like high quality videos, or maybe a whole movie, because a whole movie is going to be anywhere from a gigabyte to 7 gigabytes, all depending on the quality of it. It could be even more than that. So so you can see a 512 or a 256, if you have, let's say, several different, high quality videos that are 10 gigabytes, that's going to eat up, a lot of what you have here, right? So you can definitely eat up a lot of your space there, just on videos alone. But for the most people though, 512 is pretty okay if you're just doing basic things. If you're sharing with somebody younger, maybe get the 1 terabyte and stay with the high grade. It all depends on what you're trying to pay to. So let's take a look real quick at these computers and see now, since we're a little bit more aware of what they are, how this works. And with your laptops here, we're just going to focus on laptops for now. Maybe we might switch to desktops. We'll see how much time we have. We know now that this is an i3, 8 gigabyte memory, and it's 256 gigabytes. So what does that tell you about this one here? It tells you that this is probably a budget one. So if we go back to our list, we can see that it had an i3 is here in a budget, 8 gigabytes, and it has 256. Probably a budget one, right? So let's go ahead and look for one that's a mediocre one. This one's $729. You would expect to get at least a decent laptop for that. If we look right here, this one here, it is a touchscreen, so that's usually an added feature. Has an i5, 8 gigabytes of memory, which is RAM, and 512 gigabytes of solid state with 32 gigabytes of Intel Optane. That's probably going to be an extra portion of what do you call it, of storage, probably for this system. That's what I'm assuming. So if we look at our list here again, we know that the i5 is mid-grade. We know that the 8 gigabytes is more on the budget friendly, and the 512 is more on the mid-grade. So you can tell that this computer is probably roughly mid to low grade. It's not going to be straight in the middle or high, because we have an Intel 5, we have two aspects from the mid-range and one aspect from the budget. So that's going to be something we can keep in mind. So I think for $729, this should probably have at least 16 gigabytes. Then it would probably be worth it. Let's see here. Let's scroll down. Look at this one, $200, 4 gigabytes of memory. That tells me right away, stay away from it. Don't purchase this one. It also tells me right here it has a Celeron, which is the most budget friendly one that you can purchase, and 64 gigabytes of memory. This is a very, very low key computer. More than likely, this is probably, from what I can see, it's probably a Chromebook somehow. In another video, I'm going to make operating systems and tell you the differences between the operating systems, so keep an eye out for that one. All right, let's keep on going down. This one is $1299. We know that this one right here should be a pretty decent computer. Let's take a look here. It's a Dell Inspiron. It does have touchscreen, which is great, 15-inch. That's a decent size. It has an i7, 16 gigabytes of memory, and 1 terabyte SSD with a 32 gigabytes of Optane. So let's take a look at our list here. It has 16 gigabytes, mid-grade, 16, has an i7, and it has 1 terabyte. So this is a high to mid-grade, mid to high grade type of computer. I'd say high first because it does have the processor, and this is the most important thing, the processor. The RAM can always be upgraded in most cases. The storage for 100% could be upgraded. The CPU, and especially laptops, once you purchase it, it's a done deal. So if you're gonna purchase something, the best thing that I would say is focus mainly on the CPU. Try to get the best one possible, because the RAM and the storage can always be upgraded later by a technician if you need to, right? So let's go ahead and look at a couple more here. Look, we have some Macs. So now we're in some MacBooks. We have MacBook Pro here, 13-inch laptop, Apple M1 chip with 8 gigabytes memory, 256 gigabytes of storage. So what does that tell you? Let's take a look. Now you're going to start to see the difference between the cost and what you get from Apple versus PC. Me, myself, I'm a PC guy. I like the freedom to change whatever I want and to do whatever I like to my PC. We'll talk about that in a minute. $1,299, so $1,300, and you'll get a 13-inch screen, which is a little smaller, M1 chip, 8 gigabytes memory, 256 solid state. Well, let's take a look. 8 gigabytes, that's on a budget friendly. 256, that's on a budget friendly, and we got the M1, which is the budget friendly. Now, the M1 is not anywhere near a Celeron or a budget friendly CPU, but what I would say, it's the lower end of Apple. I would probably say the M1 is in the PC world, it's similar to like a mid-grade. So you do get a little bit of a better processor with the M1, but it's nowhere near an i7 or in the high grade. That's going to be more of the max, and a Pro is going to be around the middle of a mid-grade to a high grade. So keep that in mind. Their processor is probably a little bit better, but with an i9 or Ryzen 9, I think it's probably, in my opinion, I have to do benchmarks, but in my opinion, from what I've read, the 9s usually will triumph at the Max in certain circumstances, for example, if there is a graphic card attached, if there is other a good storage unit attached, amount of RAM. So there are aspects of it, but for the sake of this video, I would say the max is going to be a high grade. We'll bundle them all together because we're looking at average user. We're not getting into details. So let's take a look at that one more time. 8 gigabytes of memory, 256 gigabytes of SSD, which is a solid state, and it's a 13-inch, which is a relatively smaller laptop. It's about the same size as a large tablet. That's about the size of the screen. Okay, let's keep on going down. Let's see what else we got. This one is $2,700. This one should be decent for that price. We got a MacBook 16-inch laptop. That's a pretty decent sized screen. This one has the M1 Pro, which we know is about mid to mid-high, roughly around there. 16 gigabytes of space. That's gonna give us right in the mid-grade as well. And then we're looking at, let's see here, storage on 1 terabyte of solid state storage. So this isn't too bad this is a pretty decent laptop. However, that's a big price to pay, $3,000, right? Because after taxes and everything, looking at a few grand. So in your opinion, if you're a Mac lover, then this price might be worth it for you. But we're gonna do a comparison real quick and see what you get for a PC versus what you get for a Mac for those same specs. And let's take a look here. So we need to look at this one here, which is 2700, 16 gigabytes of memory. Let's click on that. It also had 1 terabyte of hard drive space. So let's look at that. All right, and now let's go ahead and take a look. We can't use the same processor because the processors are different, proprietary, Mac versus PC, but we can look at the processor quality. Right away we see here the first thing is going to be the Inspiron, and this one is 5.6, so it's just about the same size as this one down here, just a little bit shorter, a little smaller. This one has a touch screen. This one doesn't say it has a touch screen on it. Let's see here. This one has an i7, and this one has the Pro, okay? Now that means that they're pretty comparable with speed. And then looking at one terabyte of SSD. Look at the price difference though. With the Dell, you're getting $1,300. You're paying an extra $1,300 for this. That's a lot of extra money for the same amount of processing speed. Now keep in mind though, the Apple computer probably does have better quality components, and I will give them that the actual material might be better. But when it comes to the processing speed, I would say they're very comparable. The Mac may be being slightly faster than this Dell here. But for the average person, this would be just fine. Let's go ahead and take a look a little bit more at something maybe that costs more money. Right here. So now we have the Asus here. This one is also about the same screen size. This is a gaming laptop, $1,849. Now this one here is still cheaper, about $800 cheaper than the other one. Right? So it's still cheaper. And this one has the Ryzen 9, 16 gigabytes memory, but the difference is this. The NVIDIA GeForce RTX 3070. What does that mean? It means that this has an upgraded graphic card that's specially made for video games. Most people know that when you're doing video games, you don't buy a Mac, you buy a PC, because PC works with more of the graphics that you need for high visual, graphics for video games. Now, I won't say for graphic designing, because graphic designing, Mac works just fine. In some cases, people like Mac over PC. I think that they're pretty comparable when it comes to graphic designing, because I do graphic designing and I use a PC. But Macs are very good. They do have very sharp screens, and visually wise, they look great. So let's keep on going down. Look at here, we got this one here, 2400, very close to how the other price is. Let's see what we got here. So this one has an OLED screen in the back, which is a higher quality screen. We have touch screen, i7, 16 gigabytes of memory, and this also has NVIDIA graphic cards, right, with 1 terabyte solid state. So this one right here is just about the same price, and you're getting almost the same quality. So this is, and you save maybe a couple $100 or so, right? So, or a few $100. So this is about where we're looking at. But let's go ahead and look at something else here. Let's try this. Let's go back to the amounts of RAM. I'm gonna take that off. I don't see anything with actually 32 gigabytes, which is funny, but let's see if I can turn off some of these features and see if we can find 32. Looks like from here they don't offer a 32, but you can always upgrade 32 gigabytes. Sometimes they do have them. Let's take a look at hp.com and see if we can find, actually, you know what? Let's look at Dell and let's see what type of laptops or desktops we can find. Let's do laptops and Alienware. $32 gigabytes. Alienware is Dell's video game laptop or desktop model, and you get a lot of bang for your buck if you go with PC versus Mac. And like I said, Mac does have its place in the world as well. But let's take a look at what you get for $1,900. So for $1,900, you get an Alienware 15-inch, I believe, screen. You get the i9 processor, which is the top tier processor. 32 gigabytes of DDR4. That's in all of the laptop that you get. The speed does change depending, but for this argument, for here, we're just not going to look at the speeds. We're just looking at the space. This also comes with an NVIDIA graphic card, 3070, which is a great graphic chip in there, and it has that 1 terabyte of speed. It is, like I said, a 15-inch screen as well, and has a 1-year premium support included for $18.99. So you get significantly more value for your buck there. And even if we did go for something for $25.49, which is what they're looking for, this one here is an i7 3070. I would probably purchase, that one's probably looking good so far. 3070, that one right there was a 3070 also. This one has slightly faster RAM, 1 terabyte. That's the difference, and that's M2 NVMe. I think this one has a faster hard drive, I believe, and is a little bit heavier. So the quality of build, it might be a little bit better as well. But that's all I'm trying to say about the differences between laptops. So let me pull up this chart one more time, and then that way you're a little bit more informed when you go to purchase your laptop or your desktop. It applies to both laptops and desktops and all in one. And it also applies to Chromebooks, even though Chromebooks, my opinion, I would not purchase a Chromebook or anything of those sorts, simply because you don't have the functionality to download any applications or use any applications that you'd like. Chromebook is essentially similar to how a phone would be, but just in a laptop. So you're very limited to what you can do with a Chromebook. So take a look at this one more time, take a screenshot if you'd like to, and if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. I'd be happy to help. And if you want to go ahead and make a new video, leave that in the comments also, and I'll do my best to touch base on it. So thanks so much for joining, and I hope you have a great day.